Hi, and welcome to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. Today, we're going to talk about being the voice of calm in your organization. Hello, and welcome to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. I'm Kale Houser. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today, I want to discuss a little bit about being the voice of calm, the voice of reason in your organization. And you need to be able to ask yourself, am I the voice of calm or am I the voice of anxiety? Am I the voice of apprehension in my organization? When you enter a room, are you speaking to people in a way that creates a positive environment, that creates something that, I don't know if relaxed is the right word, but certainly not anxious? Are you somebody that comes in kind of all hyped up and tense, and that comes across in creating tension in other people, causing anxiety and anxiousness in them? Or are you the one that comes in with kind of that soothing voice, the voice that allows people to kind of think clearly, not be put on the spot necessarily, and react in a manner that's appropriate? And the reason this came across today is I was actually just driving home earlier this morning, and I'm sitting at a red light behind a car in front of me, and it was a multi-lane right turn lane. So I was the second in line of this red light to make a right turn. And I just happened to look in my rearview mirror, as I often do, kind of check out my surroundings, just kind of a force of habit from Afghanistan. And I see this middle-aged gal sitting in the passenger seat with presumably her husband driving, and you can kind of tell they just appeared really anxious, right? And we've all seen this, and we've all been this person where you're a little bit anxious to get somebody somewhere. Maybe you're late, something didn't go away, and now you're kind of annoyed with traffic. Well, we're sitting at this red light, and there's a lot of traffic coming across, left to right. So the person in front of me just couldn't make the right-hand turn to take advantage of the free right on the red light. Well, there was that slight pause between the cross traffic turning and then the opposing traffic getting their protected left turn into our lane. Well, these people behind me just started honking like crazy, like rah, rah, rah. And I'm sitting there going, dude, the guy had maybe 5 seconds to either go or not go before the traffic was filled up making that turn, and you just couldn't go anymore. So I just thought, didn't think much of it, and you could tell, again, I'm kind of watching her in my rearview mirror, and they're like waving their hands and, giving the knife hand, like, what's going on? And you could just tell they're probably having kind of a day. But to me, it was kind of comical, and who knows if the car in front of me could even hear them, because I could kind of barely hear their horn through my music and stuff going. So we eventually get our green light, and we go, and we turn into this 4-lane, and I needed to get all the way over to the left because I've got the freeway entrance coming up, in like a block or two. And of course they do as well. So they got annoyed that I was getting over, and I got the knife hand again, and throw the hands up, so frustrating. But the funny thing is we're going into the next red light, which has like 30 cars backed up in front of it. So they're going literally nowhere soon. So the whole thing was kind of complicated, but it got me to thinking, how we react, especially how we drive, is how we are in general, because that is our personality, that is what we do. And very few people are different people when they're driving versus when they're at work versus when they're at home, and especially as a leader in an organization. So I bring this up because I wanted you to help realize that had she been the voice of calm in her car, in her environment at this moment with presumably her husband, that would have had an effect on the husband. He probably wouldn't have started honking, and he was doing the waving the hands and stuff too, right? And had she gone the opposite track, that probably would have had an effect. And I have no doubt that her effect of, giving the snarl and the getting upset and waving her hands was negatively affecting her husband to act in a similar way, right? And this is so applicable to almost every area of our life. How we act and how we treat other people and how we are around other people is how they are going to react to us in turn, right? It's very rare that when you yell at somebody that they don't want to yell back at you, or when you give somebody a compliment, they don't want to reciprocate and give you a compliment as well. That's just kind of how human nature works. And one of the prime examples I have of this that always just gives me a chuckle whenever I think about it. So back to my MQ9 days, whenever we were on a strike, we were on the phone with JTAC. So it's a JTAC is an Air Force member, is the Joint Terminal Attack Controller. So these are the special guys. Usually they're on the ground, embedded with an Army unit or Rangers or whoever, some sort of ground unit. And they're the ones with eyes on the target, and they're the ones with the actual, no kidding, authority to employ munitions. Okay, say, hey, there's the bad guys, there's positive ID. Hey, F-16 in the sky or B-52 bomber in the sky, hit your munitions on this target, these coordinates, and you have authority to do so. And you see this, throughout movies. Certainly an example is, what was it, 13 Strong, I think it was, or 12 Strong, about the horse soldiers in Afghanistan. And there are several movies that are examples of this. But our JTACs, a lot of times, because we were striking targets that weren't necessarily visual, we got visual ID through our cameras, through the MQ-9 cameras, because it was just so good. And our JTACs were in an operations cell, usually in country somewhere else, but they're watching our feed, and we do identification, all that. I won't get into too much of the detail of that, but there was this one JTAC that we worked with that, worked a certain shift, and they rotated in and out, as their deployments went, and different shifts and things. And there's one JTAC, and we'll just call him JTAC Jeff, that every time we got on the phone with him and we were spinning up for a strike, or something was happening that was important, because the JTACs, especially in that environment, they go through their levels of approval. Like, okay, we've got to talk to legal. Is this a legal target? Make sure, and talk to the intel guys and the imagery analysis, make sure we're not striking something we're not supposed to, a mosque or a church or any sort of civilians, that these are the bad guys that we're looking for. And then, of course, the ground force commander, usually a colonel, sometimes an 05, but a colonel or above, that says, okay, yep, this is our target, this is who we want to go to. He tells the JTAC, gives him the big thumbs up, and then the JTAC gives us the actual authority to employ our munitions. So JTAC Jeff, inevitably, and our strikes were rarely were they quick things. We usually follow people for a long time, and then spool up and do practice runs, just to make sure that, this is who we think it is, and that we're going to be successful in our strike. Okay, so just to remove as many variables as can be removed in order to make it a success. So JTAC Jeff was notorious because he's on speakerphone with us, because again, we're a crew, and we're not on radios like an F-16 would be, with somebody on the ground. We're on a phone line. And so he's on speakerphone, and invariably, we would say, hey, target XYZ, we're heading this direction, and it's going to be, however many seconds or minutes until impacts of weapons, or actually until we're ready to pull the trigger, and then plus whatever long the missile flight is. And he was notorious for saying, call sign 796 is in this direction, and he's yelling in the operations center, wherever he's at, across to his ground force commander, who is probably like less than 10 feet away from him. He may be like a stair up, because usually they're kind of stadium set up, in tiers, and he's yelling at the top of his lungs across his ops center to his ground force commander. And then I'm sure the ground force commander does his last little checks and gives him the thumbs up, and then he turns, and he's sitting in front of his phone at his desk or wherever he's standing, and yells into the phone at us at the speaker, like, call sign XYZ, or whatever I said, 719, you're clear to engage, right? So, and it's this big, it doesn't do anything to bring calm to what is already a stressful situation, right? You're employing live munitions in a wartime environment. You want somebody that's, that is calm, they're collected. It implies that they know what they're doing. It implies that they're experienced at what they're doing. It implies that they're comfortable with what they're doing. JTAC Jeff was the opposite of this. He was, by him screaming at us and letting his anxiety level and his, it may have been just pure excitement, right? But letting that level take over to the point that it came across as yelling, it did not inspire confidence in us as the air crew that are employing the actual munitions, right? It actually kind of made you jittery. It made you second guess everything, like, hey man, if this guy isn't calm and relaxed, maybe he doesn't really know what's going on. Maybe this isn't our right guy. It just creates all these doubts and questions in your mind. And I wanted to ask, are you the JTAC Jeff of your organization? When you come in, are you yelling at people because you're excited? Because there's a difference between being excited and pumped up and yelling at people, like trying to get people motivated and encouraged, right? The rah-rah cheerleader type, versus the I'm kind of anxious right now and I'm letting my heart rate go through the roof, and that's coming out in my body language, that's coming out in my words and the volume of my words and how fast I speak and everything else is going on, right? And you can see how I'm changing the cadence of my voice to get across different things. And when I talk slower, I talk with a little bit deeper tone of my voice and drop everything down. That creates a more relaxed, a more comfortable environment. And it allows people that are interacting with me to think clearly, to not be so reactionary and be more thoughtful and processing in what you're asking of them or requesting of them. But when you go the opposite direction and you're talking to somebody really fast and you're saying, hey, I need to think of this right now. And hey, what do you think about this idea, right? This idea. It does not give them any time to think. They're on pure reaction mode, and you lose that quality of interaction with that person. And on worst case scenario, they shut down. They go, this guy or this gal is way over my head. I do not know what's going on right now. And they just shut down and sit there, and either you see it in their face. They either sit there and nod and just basically agree with everything you say to try to get this conversation over, or their eyes glaze over. And then if you're acutely aware enough, you kind of recognize that and you can pause. But most people, once they've entered that realm of speed and anxiety, that they are no longer aware of how people are perceiving them. And I want to strongly, strongly, strongly encourage you to be that voice of reason in your organization, okay? And you can do that by looking at other areas of your life, because you may not recognize it, and people may not be at the point where they can give you that feedback of, hey boss, when you come in and you're kind of yelling and you're talking super fast and your arms are waving because you're excited about something, people kind of shut down on you because either one, they can't keep up, or two, they just don't understand what's going on and where this is leading, right? And maybe that's led to some bad outcomes in the past. And a good indicator of that is, how are you in traffic? How are you when you're running slightly late and somebody doesn't make that free right turn? Are you the kind of person that, gives the little reminder, the little, or are you the kind of person that's like, or even the lay on the horn? None of which are really a good idea. The little tap, the courtesy tap, absolutely, that I think is totally socially acceptable. But the multiple tap and lay on the horn, you need to kind of look at yourself and figure out if this is the type of person you want to be, if that's how you want to run your organization. And if it is it getting you the results you want? Okay. And I'm not talking about excitement and motivation and things of that nature that you use, to pump people up and get them ready to go. I'm talking about the overzealous anxiety level, right? And if you don't know what that difference is, shoot me a message at kalehouserleadership.com. Shoot me an email and we can discuss it, right? And we can get on the phone call, whatever the case may be, or I can even go further into this in a future podcast. So I hope this is helpful. I hope this kind of gets your thoughts churning about your own personality, and then how to use that personality to your advantage in your organization, especially right now if you're seeing the negative effects of that personality, if that is the case. I hope you found this beneficial. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate your time. No matter where you're at in the world, have a great afternoon. Bye.